Good morning. Good morning, dignitaries, colleagues, and fellow climate enthusiasts. And welcome to the U.S. Center for today's NASA talk on climate change and agriculture, propelling global climate agricultural solutions. My name is Jeremy Adamson. I'm a senior policy advisor for climate change for USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service, and it's my pleasure to be the moderator for today's session. USDA is excited to be here to showcase just some of the fruit of our partnership with NASA, as well as highlight some of the tools and initiatives that we're providing to the global agricultural solution in support of meeting climate change challenges. You will soon see a demonstration of just some of the research collaborations and tools that USDA is providing through our new International Climate Hub. I can't think of a better way to show you than on the NASA Hyperwall, as well as a better time to show you than here at COP28, a COP that's seen historic focus in action in support of putting food and agriculture in the center of climate change. Following our demonstration, we'll have a conversation with Undersecretary of Research, Education, and Economics for the United States Department of Agriculture, Undersecretary Jacob Young, as well as NASA Chief Scientist, Dr. Kate Calvin. But before any of that, please join me in welcoming a great champion of taking action, not only in the United States, but also globally, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Vilsack.
Thank you. Jeremy, thank you very much. And it's obviously great to be here as well. Again, want to thank the U.S. Center organizers and our partners, NASA, for facilitating this important conversation on climate change and agriculture. And I want to have a particular shout out to the partnership that we have with NASA. It's an extraordinary partnership, not only the opportunity to obtain data and information from a wide variety of satellites that NASA operates, but working together to encourage the next generation of scientists, those who will be interested in food and agriculture and the interrelationship with space. So really appreciate, Doctor, you being here and being part of this. I think it's fair to say that at USDA, we are committed to providing agricultural producers with the tools they need to address the causes and consequences of climate change, while substantially increasing their productivity to strengthen global food security. Through the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the largest investment in climate action in our history, the United States is helping to mitigate climate change, generate economic activity in rural areas, and protect communities that are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. This investment includes nearly $20 billion from USDA to help meet producer demand for technical and financial assistance to implement practices that provide emissions reduction, carbon sequestration, and other climate benefits. Additionally, through our Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities, USDA has invested more than $3 billion in projects that are now underway across the country that will provide verifiable farmer climate benefits while also generating new revenue for producers who use climate smart practices. Ultimately, the 141 projects are expected to result in the application of more than 170 climate smart practices on more than 25 million acres of working lands involving more than 90 commodities, sequestering more than 60 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent over their lifetimes. And as we forge ahead with climate-related investment and innovation in our own agricultural sector, we're not just keeping it to ourselves. We're assessing and measuring what works, and we're getting this information out to producers. We've aligned as part of the Climate Smart Commodities Initiative with nearly 100 universities, minority-serving institutions, and others who are going to help us measure, monitor, and verify the results of these activities. And we're committed to sharing the knowledge and the tools worldwide through our International Climate Hub. For more than a decade, our domestic climate hubs have connected users to climate resources specific to their regions. Now we're doing this on a global scale, sharing information and tools to help translate climate science into action around the world. We're proud to share two of these cutting-edge tools with you today. In a few minutes, you'll see a video presentation highlighting Comet Planner Global and the Global Agriculture and Disaster Assessment System, or GADAS. For years, USDA has invested in tools to help land managers measure the effectiveness of their conservation practices. And you'll see shortly how these tools are being put to work in the international climate space. To put it simply, we're arming producers with ways to quantify their contributions to fighting climate change. This is absolutely critical, because if we measure and verify results, there will be those who are willing to pay for those results, whether it's eco-conscious consumers or certain industries that just can't get to net zero emissions on their own. It's not enough to focus on programs and activities to address climate change. We're also able to demonstrate results. That's why all of the USDA's climate work is underpinned by efforts to ensure the credibility of our greenhouse gas quantification. For instance, the Inflation Reduction Act dedicates $300 million for USDA to gather field-based data on the effectiveness of agriculture's carbon sequestration and greenhouse gas emission efforts. And all of our Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodity projects have requirements for measurement, monitoring, reporting, and verifying. These projects are employing a wide variety of innovative approaches and technologies in both crop and the livestock sector, and we look forward to sharing results with partners worldwide. We're making these efforts because any comprehensive global greenhouse gas monitoring effort simply must account for reductions from agriculture and forestry. We look forward to inviting other countries to join with us in our commitment to measurement and verification, and to the development of new tools that will enable agriculture to do even more. So I look forward to continued efforts with our partners at NASA and the opportunity to use data and information that they're providing to better inform our producers so they in turn can be better prepared to mitigate and adapt to a changing climate. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Secretary Vilsack, as always, for your inspiring words. We'll now see a video from the International Climate Hub and two of the tools that the Secretary just mentioned, the Global Agriculture Disaster Assessment System, or GADAS, as well as Comet Planner Global. Thank you.
Housed under USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service, the new International Climate Hub is modeled after USDA's 10 regional hubs, which for a decade have been connecting users across the United States to agricultural climate science and tools specific to their region. The International Climate Hub aims to do this same work, but on a global scale. The International Climate Hub provides information on a range of topics, and our collaborative work with other countries is also varied. From working with Vietnam to develop a software package for optimized climate-smart cattle rations, to working with Brazil on fertilizer alternatives, to working with Tanzania on solar-powered drip irrigation. On our site, you'll find tools to assess water and soil, to determine what to plant, to assess crop health and natural disasters, and much more. One tool we want to highlight today is GADAS, which uses NASA Earth observation data to assess climate impacts on agricultural lands. When users first open GADAS, the map shows icons in red, blue, and green, which indicate hazards affecting global communities with constant updates. This particular icon near Central America is showing the path of a tropical storm. Sometimes one storm will cause multiple hazards, like flooding and landslides. By clicking on an event icon, you'll find a link to a full hazard brief. Next, let's look at Europe and show the tool's impact on agriculture. Whenever there's an unusual rainfall, GADAS allows users to get some perspective on whether that event falls into the top 3 wettest rainfall events for that location. For example, in September of 2023, torrential rainstorm Daniel remained stationary over Europe for several days. dumping record levels of rainfall over some of the most productive agricultural regions in Greece. The storm caused widespread flooding and damage. Using the compare and swipe tool, we can look at the same place before the flooding to see the dramatic impact to agriculture of this extreme rain event. But GADIS is just one tool in our toolkit. USDA is also working to deliver tools that help international users understand the mitigation benefits from adopting climate-smart agricultural practices. Domestically, in the United States, USDA has invested in a suite of farm and ranch level carbon footprinting tools called COMET. We have COMET Planner, COMET Farm, and COMET Energy. Now, USDA is delivering a new COMET tool to the world, COMET Planner Global. In partnership with Colorado State University, USDA is proud to demonstrate this tool to you today. This interactive tool allows users anywhere in the world to find their location on a map and learn about their soil types and their climatic region. Understanding this helps farmers understand vulnerabilities and choose which crops to grow, which fertility programs to use, which conservation practices, and which approaches to pest management. The COMET Planner Global tool even works on mobile phones. However, its real power is harnessing underlying data to enable farmers and landowners anywhere to predict the potential of their soil to sequester carbon. Based on international data and guidelines and using science-based methodologies developed under COMET Planner, this tool demonstrates the potential of agricultural lands to reduce or remove greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. Realizing this potential is critical for mitigating climate change and enhancing soil health and agricultural productivity. Let's select Japan and see how a farmer in Hokkaido can use COMET Planner Global to understand the potential benefits of using climate-smart agricultural practices on their land. We'll find the specific farm or area of interest by either typing an address, latitude or longitude coordinates, or by dragging and zooming. And the tool immediately shows that region's soil and climatic type, which helps to inform agricultural risks and approaches. Users can then select their type of farm, smallholder or commercial, and choose their current land use, cultivated croplands, pasture and rangeland, or agroforestry, and then identify the conservation practices that they use today or are curious about using in the future. For example, they may currently apply compost or manure to all 30 hectares of their crops, which translates into 230 tons of carbon per year being sequestered in their soil. Let's say that farmer is curious about incorporating no-till farming, where crop residues are left on the soil surface, increasing organic matter in the soil and acting as a carbon sink. So they'd check that box and then enter the number of hectares where this practice would be applied. And the tool informs the farmer of the tons of carbon per year that would be sequestered in their soil from this practice alone. This information builds confidence and understanding of the benefits from adopting climate-smart agricultural practices. With continued investment and partnerships, we aim to further expand the capabilities of our COMET Planner Global tool to include practices that reduce or remove methane and nitrous oxide, so that farmers and landowners globally have access to a tool that demonstrates the potential of all of their agricultural lands to reduce or remove greenhouse gases. We hope you agree that tools like GADIS and COMET Planner Global demonstrate the power of science, data, and innovation to enable climate-smart decision-making in agriculture. The challenges are great, but so is the opportunity to build a more climate-smart food system for the future. And we're excited for the International Climate Hub to be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoyed the video and what was an impressive display of just a few of the tools housed on the USDA's International Climate Hub. You know, it's really tough to appreciate the value of those tools without actually interacting with them. So I would also encourage you to visit the International Climate Hub and to try them. Just an example. Yesterday, my colleague and I met with some colleagues from another government. She's actually a farmer. She was able to type her address into the box using COMET Planner Global and actually in a real life situation scenario, type in her hectares, conservation practices for pasture and rangelands to project out an estimated greenhouse gas emission reduction or CO2 equivalent on her farm. So I encourage you to keep visiting the USDA's International Climate Hub for regular updates and what we hope will be a tool that's useful to the global community. Now, I would like to invite to the stage two powerful voices on the role of science and innovation in support of agricultural communities in the face of climate change. Please welcome USDA's Research, Education, and Economics Undersecretary and Chief Scientist, Chavonda Jacobs-Young, as well as NASA's Chief Scientist, Dr. Kate Calvin. For being here and for participating in this conversation. So I'm going to start with you. So we just saw GADIS, which is a long collaboration of USDA and NASA, and a testament to the fruits of our collaboration. Let's expand on that. How else is NASA leveraging science and data in support of agriculture and climate change internationally?
Yeah, great. And thank you for the question. I'm honored to be here talking with you today. So one of the things NASA does is we have satellites. And so we have more than 24 satellites and instruments in orbit that are continually monitoring our planet. And we can see things like vegetation, clouds and precipitation, carbon dioxide, and much more. And so we can use that information to help inform agriculture. So in terms of agriculture, we can look at things like where crops are. We can see things like vegetation health, plant water stress. We can understand better the water cycle. So where is there precipitation? Where is there freshwater availability? What about groundwater? And so we can provide all of that information to partners like USDA to make use of it in understanding agriculture. And you saw a couple of those examples in the video. I'll highlight another couple here. We also work with USDA on global agricultural modeling so we can understand food supply around the world. And that's really important to helping planners and decision makers in local communities understand where there might be food shortages as a result of changes in weather conditions or other factors. That's a lot about observing the Earth. One of the other things that we work on is models that can help us understand what might change in the future. And so I want to highlight one of those projects that's international, includes, NASA as well as partners all around the world, the Agricultural Modeling Intercomparison and Improvement Project, or AgMIP. And there we take crop models and look at how yields of crops might change in the future as climate and carbon dioxide and other factors change. And so we can understand the changes in yields in the future and provide that information to people. And so we work towards that to understand not just what's happening now, but also what might happen in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Calvin, for that answer. Now, Undersecretary Jacobs-Young, both yesterday and today, just earlier, we heard from two amazing young women from different parts of the world describing how the youth is both impacted by climate change, but also describing their wanting to be a part of the process and be solutions for climate change. And I could feel you wanting to answer that question then. We'll have an opportunity to answer it now as I ask it. Can you tell us a little bit more about what platforms and programs that USDA offers to enable youth engagement and empowerment in with the workforce for the future in support of climate change?
Absolutely, and thank you for that question, Jeremy. And Dr. Calvin, it's so great to share the stage with you and our partners at NASA. We've created some amazing tools working together, and I just see big things for us in the future going forward. I was so impressed with our youth speakers the last 2 days. I think my cheeks were hurting because I was smiling so broadly. They are so impressive, and it lets me know that our future is bright. We have an imperative in agriculture. We have a growing population. We've heard a lot about that this week. 2 billion more mouths to feed. We have to grow more food. We want to be able to provide nutritious food to the public. And we have to do that all under the backdrop of climate change. So we need the best and brightest minds. We know in the United States that we have an aging farmer population. I don't know about your countries, but in the United States, the average age of our farmers is 58 years old, with a large portion of them over the age of 65. And we recognize that even in the agencies that I oversee as undersecretary, we have over 1,000 employees eligible to retire today. And so that number only grows as the years go by. And so we have an imperative to train the next generation of agriculture professionals. And they need to look like all of us. They need to be as diverse and equitable. We need to be equitable to remove barriers. And the way to do that is to increase exposure. And so USDA has a large history of youth programs, internships, mentoring programs, coaching programs, scholarships. We want to work with all of our communities, our indigenous communities, our rural communities. We want to work with communities that have been underserved and some communities that have been never served. And I'm very excited that President Biden and our congressional members really gave us an unprecedented investment in youth with a $262.5 million Next Gen program, where we're going to touch over 20,000 young people, bringing them into agriculture in the United States. And this program, which has been an opportunity to build capacity at some of our minority serving institutions. And we're looking forward to seeing and welcoming those individuals into the workforce. And so, Dr. Calvin, I'm not sure about you, but I hope to retire at some point. And it's upon us to make sure that we've trained the next generation so that all of us know that agriculture is left in good hands.
Thank you, Undersecretary Jacobs-Young. Now, the next question will be for you both. I'll start with Dr. Calvin. So, looking a couple of sessions ago, the Aim for Climate session here at the U.S. Center, there's really not been this is an unprecedented time for the focus that innovation, an investment in innovation has on climate change. We're going to see new technologies and innovations derived from these investments over the coming years in a way that could really have an impact on agriculture. But none of it matters if it can't be scaled. None of it matters if it's happening in a lab, on a small plot, and not available to the masses. So I'd like to hear from you both, starting with Dr. Calvin. And what do you think is needed to take science and research to scale to address climate challenges in food and agriculture?
Yeah, great. And thank you for the question. So, we have a lot of research and information that we're providing today, but there are gaps in what we do. And I think when we're thinking in the future and think about what information don't we have and how do we get that information to people. And so I'm going to highlight two examples here and then talk a little bit about getting things to people. The first thing I just want to mention is when you're thinking about agriculture, a lot of agriculture, you need to think about water. And so we've had satellite missions that can show us where it's precipitation. We have 20 years worth of information that can show us changes in groundwater. But just last year, we launched a satellite that will give us more information about surface water. It's going to provide the first global survey of water running through rivers and lakes. And we use a lot of water as we're growing crops, so understanding that's important. And continuing to think about what is the next bit of information we need to help support agriculture as we go into the future. We also, in addition to observations, we actually do research on growing crops. And we do this because we live and work in space. So we grow crops on the International Space Station. And we've done a lot of research into doing that can benefit people on Earth and working with USDA on that. So improving fertilizer, looking at LED lighting to grow crops. And that can be transferred into the communities. And there are companies that have started out using some of that NASA research for indoor agriculture. And so as we're thinking about going forward, it's not just learning new things, but also getting it to the communities. And so we're really focused on open science and making sure people understand what we have and what we do and making it easier to use in the future.
It's, absolutely. And we really do enjoy working with NASA, learning how to grow food in space. And so it's really cool. And I think it's something that the young people get very excited about. One of the things that I'm very, to me, 22 years in the Department of Agriculture, working in the public science space for ag, we have long-term infrastructure. And we've heard about the International Climate Hub this morning. I'm so excited about that. We have opportunities to remove some of the risk that producers take as they implement some of the innovative climate smart agriculture practices, looking at our climate hubs that take thousands and thousands of peer-reviewed climate change papers. Peer-reviewed papers, as scientists, we love our peer-reviewed publications, but we can't expect the layperson to go out and read our publications, and that's where the climate hubs come into handy. They take that information, they translate it into digestible information for our producers. And it was one of the things that drove us, the United States, working with the United Arab Emirates, to create AIM for Climate. And because it is an opportunity to bring together the best of the best from around the world to really accelerate and transform some of the science that we have around climate. Recognizing that in the end, farmers will need to implement this because all of the tools, all of the discoveries mean nothing if they're never translated to use by our producers.
Thank you so much, Undersecretary Jacobs-Young. Please join me in thanking both Undersecretary Jacobs-Young as well as Dr. Calvin for what's been a great discussion on our fruitful partnership, as well as putting some thought into the future on how we'll continue to work together to enable the climate community globally to address climate challenges. And of course, we'd like to thank Secretary Vilsack for his inspiring remarks here at the Open. So that concludes our program. Again, thanks to you all for joining the USDA and NASA Showcase, Propelling Global Agricultural Solutions, and look forward to seeing you all here throughout the rest of the programming. Thank you.